to the Business and Bubbly podcast. This is the place for women in business who are on the journey of building their big ideas and want to have fun along the way. It's for those of us who also know we aren't meant to do business or life alone. Hi, I'm Charity Majors, your host and the founder of Business and Bubbly. Think of this kind of like the can I pick your brain chats that you've always wanted to have with those who are doing epic things, plus business besties, hype girls, and getting into massive action towards your next big idea, all in the same place. Oh, and bubbles, because if you're not having fun along the way, you're not doing it right. Together, we'll unlock what it means to be seen, known, heard, and championed all along the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and being a woman in business building big dreams. Each week, I'll bring you a quick sip business tip, as well as interviews from top experts that make you feel like you're getting bottle service for your business. We're having the raw and real conversations and chatting about all the things, the messy middle, the pivots, scaling, the good days and the bad days, because here we do real. It's where we can work hard, play hard, cry it out, and dance it out all at the same time without being judged. This is a place where we are in the arena together and we are each other's biggest fans because most of us have enough comments from the cheap seats. It's where our too much is par for the course and where the gaps of our not enough are filled in by the other epic women that are around us. It's where we can be unapologetic about the mission we are on, about the big dreams on our heart, and the business we are building without having to be perfect or have it all together, or even pretend to. It's a supportive community where business is being done amongst like-minded women because when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. It's a place where you have the support around you to get out of your comfort zone and go after your big ideas because even when you fail forward or when you reach the top, you know it won't be alone. Also, if you know anything about me, you'll know that I'm obsessed with creating platforms that lift up other women to be seen and heard and known. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite you to list your business on our directory called Find Women in Business. All you've got to do is text the word directory to 833-231-8098, and I'll text you the link back to get your free listing. This is also a great way to connect with other women in business from around the world, so definitely check it out. And now let's get to the good stuff. Grab a glass of your favorite beverage, Prosecco, bubbly water, or whatever your flavor is, and let's dive in. Are you with me? Here we go. Welcome to the show. I am excited to be here with you guys today. As always, thank you for spending some time with me here on the podcast. Now, you guys are going to love today's guest. We talk all about money, mindset, the biggest blocks that people experience, as well as some tips on how to start to reframe your mindset when it comes to abundance. Chris Harder is our guest, and after an 11-year career as an executive and partner in the banking industry, Chris experienced plenty of success. However, he severely lacked fulfillment and was completely burned out. Recognizing that he needed a change, that he desired a change to be made, he actually retired from banking in 2011 and partnered with his wife, Lori, and her brand, LoriHarder.com, along with their Isagenix network marketing business. Now, this is actually where Chris, Lori, and I met, was through some leadership events with Isagenix, which is awesome. And so now Chris handles most of the business affairs and business coaching for their two multi-million-dollar brands and has found exactly the fulfillment and happiness that he was seeking in a career. Chris is also the host of the new hit podcast, For the Love of Money, aimed at helping people bust through their money mindset blocks to become unapologetic about their pursuit of wealth. It's through interviewing business moguls and celebrities and exposing their exciting stories of contribution and philanthropy that he helps prove that money is a tool for good in a world with many needs. So make sure you guys grab a pen and you tune in, that you are present, that you raise your expectation for this awesome podcast with Chris Harder. And thanks again for being here on the podcast. Welcome to the show. And first of all, Chris, I just want to thank you for sharing your time, your expertise, and just your heart to serve others, and just for being on the podcast.
You know what? Totally my pleasure. I love what you're up to. I love what you're doing, and just you inviting me on is a privilege. So excited to do it.
Thanks. Well, people, they obviously heard your awesome bio and just the things that you are up to and the lives that you are changing. But we all know that things were not always like this. And I know I've been able to hear yours and your wife, Lori, your guys' story. But I always want to make sure that people that are listening get to know you guys and a little bit about your journey. And so let's kind of start a little bit more at the beginning, as well as maybe that moment where you kind of knew that you were meant for more, and how did things change for you?
Yeah, I love that phrase, by the way. Just everything about meant for more. I think that we all have that inside of us. Yeah. And I think some people stuffed it way down, and you're doing a good job of pulling that out of them, or reminding them that, yeah, they're meant for more. And I totally had that moment. What's really funny is, I'm Midwest born and raised. And the good thing about being from the Midwest is you get really good, fundamental things to build life on. You get good family values, you get good work ethic, all the really important stuff. And then sometimes if you can take those really good foundational items and you can take them to one of the two coasts where everything is going on, that can be a crazy successful 1-2 punch. And that's the part that people have seen today, right? Is that combo that's led to where we're at today. But the journey on getting there has been wild. I think people forget that I was kicked out of college after 2.5 years. And, I was excited because I didn't want to be there anyways, but my parents were devastated. They thought my life was over. And I got into the car business because here I was, this 20-year-old, I guess I was probably 21 at the time, 21-year-old kid that loved cars and didn't want to be in college. And so where else would I go? Of course, get into the car business. And that's where I learned sales and leadership. And I feel like if you can learn sales and leadership, you can write your ticket anywhere. So then, after spending about 1.5 years there, all of my friends were starting to get into the big banking boom that was starting to happen. There was a huge lending boom that was starting to happen. And, keep in mind, this is 20 years ago now, 19 years ago, whatever it is. So, of course, I wanted to be a part of that. They're all making a ton of money, and I wanted to make more money. And so I talked my way into an entry-level loan officer position at the world's largest bank. And I wasn't qualified for it. Matter of fact, when I showed up, the guy who was interviewing me said, "Hey, I already have my guy picked out, but you were on the schedule," right? But by the end of the interview, I totally changed his mind. And that was the start of my banking career. And I actually worked my way up there at that bank. I was the fastest rising executive out of, 330,000 employees. And it was awesome. It was fun. It was positive. It was full of sales development and self-development. It was just this great atmosphere until the recession hit. And that's when it shut off like a faucet. And I spent the next year waking up first thing, sneaking out of bed before Lori was up, and getting on an airplane and going to close down bank branches. I did that for about 1 year, and it was miserable. The worst year of my life. I gained 30 pounds, and our marriage was at its worst point because I was never home. And of course, I was miserable. And so if I'm a miserable person, I make for a miserable spouse. And what's that?
Don't we all?
Yeah, totally. Right. So much of it has to do with where we're at, not where the other person's at. Yeah. And it was just a really bad year. And then they came to me and they said, you can have a severance package, or you can have a demotion of a demotion of a demotion of a demotion and run a branch in Jersey. And I said, give me the severance package. I'm out of here. Now, here's the caveat. Here's the catch. That severance package was a multi-six-figure severance package in a lump sum. Like, here you go. Except we had to spend that entire severance package and then some. Literally had to borrow more money from my parents to pay off all our debts, to get rid of our rental properties that were now upside down. We walked away from most of them because it didn't make sense. We short sold this huge home that we just built. We had to get rid of 2 out of the 3 cars that we had that were all brand new. And one of them was so upside down it didn't make sense to get rid of it. Like, we were living so far beyond our means because I was in my 20s and I thought it was going to last forever. I was young, arrogant, and ignorant. And I thought that that was going to last forever. Now, I look back at this time, right? And people are like, oh, that must have been horrible. Yeah, in the time, it felt like garbage. That's the truth. But it's also like the greatest, most formative time probably of my life, because it's when you're stripped of everything, like your false identity of how many people do you manage, and your false identity of, what things do you have, and your false identity of, are you a good provider? Which I look back at what I thought was a good provider for Lori, and I laugh. It's a joke, right? I thought if she didn't have to work and she had a nice house, then that was being a good provider. So when you're stripped of those things, then you get to choose again. And I had nowhere to go but up. I had nothing to choose from other than how I wanted to show up in the world. And that was the moment. And I don't mean a moment like a day. I mean a moment like a 24-month period. That was the moment where I started to make the right choices. I wanted to show up with generosity. I wanted to show up in entrepreneurship. I wanted to show up in, in a way that actually was stripped of all these shallow things and really gave something back to the world. And that's where Lori and I joined forces and really started to grow the businesses and, create some of the accomplishments that you hear of today.
I love it so much. So I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about when you you jumped into this position, you basically sold the guy that, okay, I should be in this spot. And you rose to the top above 30,000 other employees, and you were totally not qualified. I know for me, one of the old stories that I used to tell myself was, that I didn't have what it took, whether it was the qualifications or the certifications or, so imposter syndrome was really something that I had to work through. So for you, was that something that you had to work through? And if so, how? And how would you encourage someone else that if maybe they are feeling the imposter syndrome with what they are doing, regardless, they might be seeing awesome results. They might be seeing external validation of rising to the top or whatever it is, but still might feel like an imposter, which will lead to self-sabotage.
Yes.
So
yes.
What would you say to those people?
First, I think everybody needs to realize this. The imposter syndrome never goes away. You just learn how to manage it better. You just get the tools to kind of refocus it. If people are waiting for that to go away, or if they're thinking it's just them, or if they're thinking it's something that, in the beginning you have, but once you make it to X, then it goes away. That's not the truth. Everybody still suffers from it. Every one of my peers suffers from it. Every giant influencer that you see on social media, when we have really intimate conversations, they still suffer from it. It's something that you simply learn to refocus, and you learn enough tools to realize it's not true, and you can recover from it a little bit quicker. That's really what happens. Yeah. And boy, talk about imposter syndrome. I was so afraid during that banking career that it would go away because I didn't have that college degree, that I felt like if it was that or nothing. And then when it went away, I took a partnership in a tiny little startup mortgage bank because I felt like I had no other options, right? And then when I finally, I stuck around in that mortgage partnership. I was a junior partner there, and we grew the company really fast at the tail end of the recession. But the more we grew it, the more miserable we got. And I spent 3 years there being totally miserable because my imposter syndrome said, you don't have the background, you don't have the education to go do anything else, so you might as well tough it out here, right? So imposter syndrome is a messed up and powerful thing. And it wasn't until I really started to learn some of the values, nothing has any meaning except for the meaning that you apply to it. And, you're always viewing life kind of through these certain colored lenses. And these lenses, the color of the lenses that you view life through are really just based on your experiences, the meaning that you apply to those experiences. And I really learned that I can kind of choose to have a new self-value, and I could choose to see the world in a different way and with more opportunity. I could choose to place less significance on whether it was a job I was in or an opportunity in front of me, and just take a swing at it or not. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. So you really just start to learn to live with and mitigate that imposter syndrome, but it'll still show up today, because here's what happens. As you climb the ladder. And I hate that term, but I don't know another analogy. So everyone's trying to climb a ladder, right? They're trying to grow their business or get more followers, or who knows what they're trying to do, but they're trying to climb a ladder of sorts. When you do, what happens is you then get exposed to a new level, and that new level has new higher level people. And so immediately it triggers your imposter syndrome again. You say, oh, well, I'm not ready to collaborate with that person. They're way up here. But then you do, and it works out, and you climb the ladder more as a result. But then you see this new level, and you say again, oh, I'm not ready to collaborate with that person. They're way up here. So it just becomes this sabotaging monster that you have to learn to be able to quiet and, give yourself something different to listen to, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that there's a technique that we use in transformational coaching, and it's figuring out like this confirmation bias, right? So have you ever gone shopping for a new car, and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, right? And it's because you've given your brain something to focus on. And so I love using this with my imposter syndrome is, okay, like, well, what are some times where I was enough, or I was qualified, or what are, like, I have like all these different certifications and all these different degrees that I have. And it's like, okay, actually, like, I do have what it takes. And if I don't, who cares? And it's going to be a lesson along the way, right? So now all of a sudden I'm looking for these different confirmation biases, and those start to show up. Mm-hmm. And it's just a fun exercise. So,
and one of the most powerful things you can do is really take inventory of the people you have around you. Are they confirming your negative bias, even accidentally, right? Are they allowing it? Or have you surrounded yourself with people that are going to call you out on it, that are going to speak life into you, that are not going to tolerate you with some of these sabotaging ideas? Because most people are running around with a crowd that feels like friends, feels like family, feels like whatever. And on the surface, of course, these people love you, but many times they're accidentally sabotaging your goals without even knowing it. And I stress accidentally, sabotaging your goals without even knowing it, because they do things like, oh, you used to be more fun when you were more available, or, oh, you used to, do this. You used to be this way. And really what they're doing is they're reflecting on when things were most comfortable for them, not when things were best for you. And that's human nature. So, you really got to take a look at who you're running around with and see if they're confirming some of these negative biases or not.
So good. I love that. So when it comes to, right, your tribe and your money mindset, since obviously you have your awesome For the Love of Money podcast, which is one that I listen to on a regular basis. So if you guys haven't subscribed to that, make sure that you subscribe to Chris's podcast. But when it comes to your tribe as well as money mindset, how does that affect what goes on?
Oh my gosh, it's everything. So some of it we just talked about, right? They're when you've got big audacious goals, they might accidentally talk you out of them. Or some of them, they might maliciously talk you out of them because you become a mirror for what they could achieve, but they're not ready to go after it. Right. I always say that the hardest part of transcending your tribe or of any success is transcending your tribe, right? Because they're people you care about and you feel like you're leaving them behind, but you're never leaving them behind. You are simply going where you are meant to go, and they have the choice to come along with you or not. And as a matter of fact, if you could take that a step further and you can say that if you don't go where you're meant to go, then who's going to be the inspiration for your tribe? Who's going to be the inspiration for your group? Who's going to go first? Who's going to say, no, we really can live a different way? No one is. And so you have an obligation to go where you're meant to go, to chase down those goals with or without them, because they can choose to come along if they want. But when it comes to your money mindset, I ask people all the time, I'm like, hey, get out a piece of paper real quick. And I want you to write down the 5 or 6 people that you're closest to. And right next to that, I want you to write down what you think that they make per year. Because most people have an idea of what their friends and family make. Or you can make an educated guess. And when they do, they realize one of two things. They're always in the upper half of those friends or family, or the top earner. Now, listen, I'm not going to say this is a good or bad thing, other than the fact that you have nobody who's going to stretch you to the next level if you're all earning about the same amount of money. And so when you run around with what appears to be normal, you think it's also normal to make, I'm just going to use an example number. It's normal to make $100,000. When you don't realize that if you were to change the normal around you, you might actually realize that it's normal to make $250,000, or it's normal to make $1 million. this really happened to Lori and I. We were living in Minneapolis, and I'll give you real numbers. When we moved out to California, we were making approximately $1.2, $1.3 million a year when we moved out here 7.5 years ago. Now, in Minneapolis, and I love Minneapolis, that'll get you a really good life, especially 7.5 years ago. There's no real pressure to get to the next level because you're already towards the top of your tribe. Now, I moved out to Los Angeles here with Lori, and we moved into this building. And this building was right on the edge of the ocean with the most epic views, and it was really in demand. And I quickly realized that we were some of the poorest people in that building. And I never had that feeling before when I was making that money in the Midwest. And as I would walk the dog and meet the other people in the building and start to have that conversation that's inevitable, what do you do and what's your background? And as I would sit down and become friends with more people in the building, I quickly realized that not only were we one of the poorest people in the building, but there were so many more ways of making money. There were so many new ways of being that we had never been exposed to before. There were so many more levels that never felt like reality to us until we got to know the people at those levels. That single-handedly alone doubled our income over that next year and a half, and then it doubled again, and so on and so on. So my point is, when you run around with people that are doing extraordinarily better than you, then you're going to be forced to up level simply because that becomes your new normal. Yeah. Now, more important than that, a lot of people will say, well, I love my friends, I love my family. I'm not just going to start exchanging them for people that are doing better than me financially so I can make more money. That doesn't feel right to me. You're not exchanging people. You're adding people to your tribe, right? And this goes back to what I said before. You're almost obligated to go out there and up level so that the people who are currently in your tribe, when you go to the next level, will be inspired to do that themselves. But if no one new is invited in, then you're going to have no new levels, no new ideas, no new inspirations, no new anything. So you've got it. Lori and I, every year, we purposely sit down, we make a list of people that we would love to get to know, people that inspire us, and people that also scare us, right? It's always the same person. They inspire us, we'd love to get to know them, and they also intimidate us a little bit. We make this list, and then we are very intentional about setting, whether it's dinner dates or workout dates or whatever it might be, collaborating on a project together with these people so that we can get to know them and invite these new, higher performing individuals into our tribe. And every year, half the people on that list end up being a no, and half the people on that list end up being a yes. And it's a really great way to keep growing the normalcy around you to another level.
I love that. So if someone is walking into, whether it's a season of evolving their tribe and being forced to level up in the best way possible, or whether it is, right, because there's a lot of times it's these subconscious things that are underneath the surface that can hold us back. So whether it is this feeling unworthy of making more money or scared of what other people might think, what are some things that as people are leveling up their tribe, as they are, whether it's in their business, in their mindset, in who they're surrounding themselves with, what would you say are some of the most common money mindset or money mistakes that you might find, and how would you advise them to move forward?
The first thing you got to do is actually look backward. And you got to look backward to clean up some interpretations of events that happened in your life. So I'm sure you talk about on this podcast all the time, people build stories around events that happen in their life, and those stories become the lenses that they see the world through. And that's why they think something is the way it is, right? That's why they think something is possible or is not possible. And so when I say you got to look backward first, you need to look back at your earliest thoughts on what are your first memories around money? Who are the first people you remember talking about money, and what did they say? What were some of the first times you remember having money yourself, and what were you told to do with it? Because those very early memories are some of the cornerstones of how you act with and behave with and view money today. These were things that were planted into your DNA when you were in your most formative years as a youngster. And so you have to look back, and now here's the best part. You as an adult now get the chance to look back and change your interpretation of some of those events. Here's a very easy example. Let's say mom or dad lost a couple of jobs while you were a kid, and they would come home and they would say, oh, that greedy boss, they let me go again just so they can make some more money. Well, that actually becomes this very formative view in your life because your parents are your hero and you think someone just harmed them. And who harmed them? That greedy boss. So now, heaven forbid, you're never going to want to be like that greedy boss, and you end up being a victim like your parents. But now as an adult, you get to look back at that and say, wait a minute, was that a greedy boss, or did maybe mom or dad not hold up their end of the bargain? Maybe mom and dad were only playing at 80% instead of 100%. Maybe mom and dad were tough to get along with, and that's why they got let go. Maybe they didn't have chemistry with them. Who knows what, right? Maybe it was a recession. Maybe it was anything. And so that's one example of how you get to look back on these moments in time that have formed your money mindset today and reframe them, now that you're a little bit smarter, into a interpretation that's going to be way more empowering and give you way more permission to go out and pursue what it is you want to pursue. So that's number one. Number two, we already talked about tribe, so let's just call that number two. Already been there, done that. Number three, you really need to plan the type of financial life that you want and work backward from there. And whether you're an entrepreneur or not, this is where so many people go wrong. They let their income happen to them. They let their net worth happen to them instead of calling your shot for the year and then working backwards to build a set of tracks on how they are going to get there. And if people would just start doing this, it's such a game changer because you can't hit what you don't aim for. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you two examples here. Let's say a husband and wife are both, gainfully employed, pretty normal jobs. They each make 60 grand. So as a couple, they make 120 grand a year. If they don't call their shot and work backward, then they're going to be letting their income happen to them each year. Maybe they're each up for a promotion, and maybe they're each hoping they get that promotion over the next year. And they're so excited because each one will go from 60 grand to 70 grand, and they'll go from 120 to 140. But let's be honest, that's not a life-changing leap. That might just make the car payment easier and add a vacation in or something like that at best. If you really want financial freedom, if you really want to take massive leaps financially, then you need to figure out what is that number over the next year for you, and how do you hit that number, whether you're an individual or whether you're a couple, by building a set of tracks of where exactly it's going to come from. So let's use that same couple. They were each making 60 grand a year. Let's say in the beginning of the year, they said, all right, no matter what, we need to get to $250,000 next year to really up-level our life. So they're going to go from 120 to 250. To some people, it might seem like an unrealistic jump until you're forced to build that set of tracks of where would it come from if it were to come from somewhere. And he or she might say, I've got enough time to do a side hustle that could bring in $30,000. So now that person went from 60 to 90. And the other person might say something like, people have been asking me to consult for many years now in the field that I'm receiving a salary for. Maybe I just need to pull the plug and start taking these people that are asking me to consult for them as a client and repurpose my skill sets in a self-employed way. And that might bridge that gap that they needed in order to hit that 250. So if you don't call your shot and build a set of tracks working backwards, you're never going to reach these big audacious numbers because you're just not going to hit what you don't aim for. And so this is an activity that Lori and I do every single year without fail. And I don't think we've ever hit our number once, but we pick big audacious numbers and we come super close. So I would rather, what's the old phrase out there? Shoot for the stars and land on the moon. I would rather do that every single year than just let our income happen to us and hope for, cute little incremental raises.
I love that. That's so good. So good. And you talk about that in your money principles in your online course, which I take and I'm loving it. And I always like to make sure that I'm investing in, especially what we focus on grows. And so it was really cool as a testimonial for you. So if you guys
I love that. Thank you, by the way. That means the world to hear, by the way, because you said you have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen. And so they'll be able to identify with this. Your biggest fear when you put your heart and soul into a product is what if it doesn't work? And not just what if it doesn't work, what if it just doesn't work for one person? Because Lori and I always say, like, our worst case scenario, our nightmare scenario is that somebody would be like, oh, did you take that such and such with Chris and Lori? And someone said, yeah, it's pretty good. Like, that would be crushing to us. And I know you feel the same way about everything that you put out there. So when you hear people say those types of things, that means the world getting that kind of feedback.
Yeah, no, it was awesome when I was like diving in and I got a couple of their books and was like super focused in on some money mindset stuff. I had my largest month that I've ever had. And so.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. See, what you did was you decided to go out there and change your target, and then you built the set of tracks saying, okay, what do I need to change that target? I probably need some new people in my life. I probably need some new mentors. I probably need some new training. I probably need a couple new books. And you went out and you got the tools to assemble this set of tracks in order to go to this new higher level that you wanted to go to. And most of our lives have been taught to play defense. And what I mean by that is we've been taught to take the safe route. You probably grew up very similar to me, like get good grades and get into a good school and get a good job and, put a good amount of money in your 401k and buy a home as early as you can. It's your best investment. And the problem is this. The problem is that's middle-class advice. So even if it works, the best you're going to do is middle class. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, except for this new fact. The world is changing so fast that the middle class is rapidly disappearing. So choosing to accept middle class advice and aiming for middle class, maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, was a good life. Today, you're really aiming for a class that doesn't exist anymore. So this divide between the haves and the have-nots, this is the reality that we're in. This divide between the haves and the have-nots has never been growing faster. And you're either going to stop playing defense and go on the offense and learn how to go out there and create new income and create multiple sources of income and create passive income or residual income. And you're going to learn to know and love your numbers. And you're going to learn to create your own destiny. It doesn't mean you won't have hiccups along the way, but you're going to learn to drive that car instead of be a passenger, or you're going to automatically be put in the bucket of people who are struggling. There is no more 1950s comfortable middle class. It's a farce. And our parents meant well when they taught us the tools to get there, but they didn't know what the future was going to look like. And they didn't understand how fast the economy and the way money works was going to be changing. And so, anyone listening right now, this is your wake-up call to take this into your hands and just try on for size. That's a term that Lori and I always use. Just try it on for size. If it's not a fit, that's okay. But try on for size the idea that you've been given old, outdated advice around money, and that it's your time to seek brand new ways of viewing and earning and brand new standards of financial standards of how you're going to live in this world, or you're automatically going to be shoved down into the struggling class. And I don't want that for anybody.
Totally. I love that so much. So speaking of being intentional about being in the driver's seat, I also believe, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong or if I need to choose a different story to tell myself, but to be able to do that, we have to be able to invest in ourselves, right? Because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
We do, and then we're able to do better, right?
Yep.
And so if someone is, they're like, I want to get in the driver's seat. I want to learn these new things, but maybe they're afraid of investing in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to?
I'd say there's no safer investment, number one, because you know yourself better than you know anything else. You know yourself better than the stock market. You know yourself better than the housing market. You know yourself better than, anything else that you might consider putting your money in. So invest in yourself first and foremost. Matter of fact, people ask me all the time, they're like, okay, as I'm starting to make money, as I'm young, as I'm growing this life, what order should I invest in things? Should I rush out and get a house right away? Should I be putting money in my 401k right away? And in many cases, these are very wrong moves that society has told us are correct moves because someone on the other end is getting a commission. Like, don't be fooled. The National Realtors Association is one of the most powerful groups in the world, right? Not to mention the banking system where it says, hey, put your money with us, we'll keep it safe, while they pay you a few percent and turn around and lend it out at 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, 11%. So the reason I bring this up is the best investment you can make is in yourself, developing the skill sets, developing the confidence, developing the financial wherewithal to be able to be in that driver's seat, using the analogy that you put. And after you have created some momentum and income by investing in yourself, then you can start to consider investing in those other things. But I can name person after person after person who rushed out and got that home and contributed to their 401k. And now they are so broke. They have business ideas, but they don't know how to start them. They don't have the money to start them because they invested in the wrong order. Yourself has to be, the number. And people right now, if they're like, okay, I don't understand, invest myself. What does that mean? It means coaches. It means mentors. It means masterminds. It means courses. It means books. Like if you're like, I don't have a lot of money, you can afford a book, right? It means any form of guidance that's going to teach you the fastest route to where you want to go and support you in that route, as opposed to the traditional ways that we've been taught to get somewhere.
So good. I love that. So speaking of resources and courses, I always want to make sure that people know about like not only where to find you and to follow you, but just what you are equipping other people, especially us as entrepreneurs, because I wholeheartedly believe, right? Like absolutely, like invest in yourself, bet on yourself. You are the best investment that you can make. And obviously success leaves clues, and you and Laura, you guys are doing it right and doing it well and doing it in integrity. So first of all, thank you for your guys' commitment to invest in yourself and also to serve others along the way so that they can serve the world at a bigger and better capacity. So what is it that you're up to? What do you have going on? How can people, you have an awesome mastermind going on. You have your online money principles course. You've got your podcast. So give it all to them. I'll make sure to put everything in the show notes.
At risk of sounding like an advertisement, I would just say this. Yes, we have our masterminds. Those are for entrepreneurs, and it's one of our favorite things we do. And you can certainly go check those out just by going to fortheloveofmoney.com and clicking on our products there. But I think the thing I'm most proud of is the money principles course that you were talking about before. And here's why. We live in a day and age where I feel like everybody creating a course is creating like $1,000 course or a $2,000 course. And I'm not knocking them because we built $1,000 course a year and a half ago as well. So there's a time and a place for that. But the one thing about money, like being taught the new truths about money, the people that most need that, they can't buy $1,000 course. They can't buy a $2,000 course, or heaven forbid, I've seen some that are like $4,900 to learn these things. And so we set out, when I say we, I mean my team and I, to build probably like the greatest money principles. Here's everything that you weren't taught, not because people didn't love you, but because they didn't know any better, set of principles ever. And we priced it super, super, super low so that the people that actually do need to learn it are able to get their hands on it if they really do want to create some change in their life. And I think that's one of the things that I was most proud of.
Yeah, which is so awesome. You guys have filled in that gap, which I've noticed was there, right? It's like what you said, there's either like, great, get this thing for $5,000, but people are like, okay.
Right. We're seeing this all the time now. It's almost an arms race. And again, I'm very clear. There is a time and a place for an expensive course. Yeah. But it's almost like this arms race to see who can charge the most for their mastermind, who can charge the most for their course, who can charge the most for their retreat or whatever it is. And I saw it happening. I thought, I'm just going to kind of sit back and, because we have that new entry-level mastermind, this price way below everyone else's, and this money course way below everyone else's. I wanted to fill in that gap for everyone who felt left behind a little bit.
So awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing that, for just providing so much value, for your time. I'll make sure to put everything, all your websites and all that fun stuff in the show notes. So you guys make sure you check it out. Also check out Chris's podcast, For the Love of Money. Show him some love. And Chris, thank you again so much for your time. It was an honor, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you again sometime soon.
Count me in anytime, because this went by so quick, and I'm just so grateful for what you're doing. So don't let up at all.
I will. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I hope it brought some value and some fun into your business and life. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and even share the episode with a fellow business bestie who you know will love it. It helps us continue to attract top-level guests and reach more and more women who are on their journey in business just like you. Remember that when money gets in the hands of good women, great things happen. Cheers to your success.